We have one dear, wonderful person that's coming in, and that's Molly. So we're going to wait for Molly to come in. Come on in, Molly. I wanted to start, but we couldn't start till you got here. Hey, sweetie, good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, welcome everyone. I am glad that you are here. I told the first service how impressed I am with the fact that of all the members of the church who come to worship, by and large, it is our mature members. Now, I don't know how old you have to be old or mature. But guys, thank you so much for supporting your church and your pastor and all that we do. Your time, your effort, and your willingness to be here on what's going to be a miserable day is really appreciated. So thank you, and welcome to Community Church this morning. I want to share with you the announcements really quickly, because I have a story that I want to tell you. And Emily Neville and Bill Neville are going to enjoy the story again for like the third time. But it's something that happened this week that I hope that you will enjoy, and Sally, you as the elementary school teacher will also enjoy. Because I had an experience in that age group this week, and it was just cool. They're just great kids. So let's do announcements, and then we'll go from there. So is today or this week anyone's birthday? Any birthdays this week? Okay. Don't hear any. Are there any anniversaries this week? Okay, not hearing any either. So I want to move on to our announcements then and share with you that in February we will be celebrating Black History Month. And here's how we're going to do this. I'm going to make the effort to choose hymns by African American hymn writers and musicians. That's one way. And I'm certainly going to pick a day where we have hymns by Charles Albert Tilley, who grew up where? Anybody know? In Berlin, Maryland. He's one of the great African American hymn writers. Has more hymns, I think, are credited to him than almost any other African American hymn writer. So we're going to do that. We're also going to have a quote each week by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., just for you to ponder and think about. And also on my weekly Facebook, I'm going to be mentioning it. And in the book club, we have a book club here. We've been meeting together and reading. The book for this month is Native Son, which is a classic book written by Richard Wright, which I read in college, I believe. And it's just a fabulous book and very enlightening as well. I think it's important that we do these kinds of things because it reminds us of the wonder of our culture and of all people and the gifts they bring to our faith. Church council meeting is going to be by Zoom. It will be at our regular time. Now, here's the thing. If you're a member of the council, we by and large most likely have your information for contacting. But since the church council is open to everyone, and everyone is invited, but only those who are members can vote, and you'd like to attend, because you want to know what's going on in the life of your church, let us know. That way we can send you the Zoom invitation. You are always, always welcome for that. We need volunteers for the Nook. Now, that means for the Nook as it exists now, and we'd like to open the Nook one more day each week. We've talked about some of the financial issues, but looking at the numbers, it's our belief that if we open the Nook one more day each week, it will garner about $19,000. And that's nothing to sneeze at. We do need people of all varieties and places of well-being and health and ability, and there's all kinds of things that everybody can do. I've had 2 persons this morning talk to me about volunteering, and we'll put those persons in touch with Judy Steinweiser, and Judy will help us know the way ahead. So please do think about that prayerfully. The bottom line is you're helping your church, you're helping others, and I think that people that work there seem to have a whole lot of fun. And so it's a good group, so please keep that in mind. I will tell you that one day this week, after the announcement was made for where we are heading with the need to pick up the principal and the interest, one day this week we received $8,000. So thank you for listening and hearing and such. And we're going to need more days like that. I mean, that's just the way it is. But thank you. It's appreciated. We're developing a prayer ministry here at the church. Not that the things that we've been doing with prayer have anything wrong with them, but we want to enhance that and maybe bring some more structure and organization to it. Prayer ministry is a group that's saying that on every Wednesday from 10 to 12, the church will be open for prayer. And I'm kind of excited, very excited to say that beginning Tuesday, there will be a morning devotional. Monday and Wednesday you can see me. On Friday you can see Bob. And on Tuesday you can see the prayer ministry people. And the first one is an excellent story by Joanne Faber. She did a tremendous job. And so I want you to support that if you would, please. And if you would like to do a devotion, I'd love to have you do it. You know, I think it's kind of cool because you can say to your grandkids, that's grandma, that's grandpa, that's whomever. But, you know, it's great that we as a congregation have lots of different faces and voices that are a part of that. Tonight, Bible study is at 6 o'clock. It's by Zoom. And next week, Bible study will be at 2 o'clock because there's something taking place called the Super Bowl. I am really wrestling with this whole issue because I'm rooting for the commercials. I don't like either team. But just be aware that we're going to we don't want to compete with that, and so tonight at 6, next week's at 2. Ash Wednesday, which you kind of get an idea, so you can invite people to come. What we're going to do for Ash Wednesday, because we're really thinking hard about how we can be safe and how we can be safe for you. From 8 to 9, and if you have to be at work beforehand, I will gladly meet you here. Emily asked me if I could come early so she could go to school at the right time. Whatever time you need me to be here in the morning, I'll be here. But from 8 to 9, 12 to 1, and 5 to 6, I'm trying to catch you coming and going. I'm going to have a little bag. It's going to have ashes mixed with oil. And as you drive through, I'm going to hand you that bag and say, from dust you have come, to dust you shall return. Repent and believe the gospel. And at your convenience, you can do it right there, whatever. I want you to impose your own ashes. And I'll have paper towels for you too. At 6:30 that night, Mike and I will be filming the service component. So I invite you to join Facebook, church's Facebook page, at that time or another time for Facebook, for Facebook Live, so that we can then do the service together. I'm going to try to keep telling you ahead of time because that way you know that we're going to try to do all the things that are in Lent and Holy Week in a safe way, but in a way that's meaningful for worship. And that right now is the best I know. I have one colleague who's going to be using a long Q-tip on each person. And I didn't like that idea. I kind of like this idea. So we will have Ash Wednesday recognition. And Ash Wednesday, of course, is the traditional beginning of Lent. I also just want to say to you in closing here that I had an event this past week that I absolutely loved. It made my whole week. It's still making my day today. And that was I had the chance to be the chapel speaker at Seaside Christian Academy. And that's where Emily teaches. And she's an outstanding teacher, as all of our educators here are. And I love going there. The kids are excellent. I mean, they're just tremendous young people. The teachers and the administrator, Julia's a wonderful person. It's just a good place. And when I go, it makes me happy. I enjoy it. So I was thinking, what would I say to these kids? Because I take this seriously. And I thought, Paul, that all these children have to have some fears around the pandemic. I mean, they got to be thinking, what would happen if something happened to mom or dad or grandma or grandpa? Or maybe they don't understand the conversations. And I was dead wrong. Just absolutely way off. Because I wanted to speak about the topic. God tells us to not fear, but have faith. I think it sounds like a good thought, right? Absolutely, I agree. So I got there, and I told him the story about my visit to the dermatologist where I had this removed and these two things over here removed. And then there was a new doctor who I didn't really know, and then I was kind of afraid, apprehensive of going. And that was made even more true by the dear friend, member of this church who saw me at 7-Eleven and proclaimed in front of everyone, "Dear Reverend Brown, what did you do to your face?" I wasn't sure how to answer that. And unfortunately, I knew what she meant. So anyway, I told the kids this, and I was trying to tell them the Bible story that Jesus is asleep in the boat, and the storm's there, and I had him act out the wind and the waves. And I asked them, "What are you afraid of?" And I'm not sure if the order's right, Emily, but and I said, "So what are you afraid of?" And I thought there was a code of all this stuff. Number 5, working down. Spiders. The dark. Number 3 was snakes, and I still agree with that one. Number 2 was my father when we were playing hide and seek in the house, and he jumps up from behind the wall and scares me. Number 1, volcanoes. That one I have never heard before. And I've lived in this area almost all my life, except when I was in college and seminary, yet to see a volcano. Suppose we could have one, but nobody's come knocking at my door saying, "Hi, I'm a volcano." And these kids knew everything there is to know about volcanoes. And I kept trying to tell the Bible story, working hard as a pastor, chaplain, doing chaplain, what was supposed to do, Sally. And I learned more about volcanoes. For the next 10 or 15 minutes, I would get right into the story, and then some little person would raise their hand, and pre-K or someone, and they'd say, "And do you know that volcanoes spit out hot lava?" And then I could talk a little more. "And do you know that volcanoes can erupt underwater and things?" So I spent the next several minutes with volcanoes. And then I went over to say goodbye to Emily in her class because they were across the hall from the chapel. And they all greeted me with, "Well, what do you think about volcanoes?" And then I had dinner with these guys this past Thursday night. They even brought me a book on volcanoes. So here is what I learned from this story. If you are driving down 589 and you see a volcano behind you, drive faster. If you're out walking, walk faster. And things, but it just really shocked me that it would be volcanoes. But that's what it was. And Emily, you can tell everybody there, I had a blast. I thoroughly enjoyed it. They are like, like most children. They're just outstanding. There's something beautiful and wonderful about that innocence and that kindness. And now I am forewarned about volcanoes. So Dick, we're going to go to you for the prelude and then Paul to you for our opening worship.
Apropos of Super Bowl commercials, I just read recently that this is the first time, I think, in 30 years that Budweiser will not be participating in Super Bowl commercials. Good morning. My name is Paul Whitson. Welcome to God's house. Let us pray. We come unto your presence, O Lord, with so many burdens and concerns on our hearts. Help us to be open to your words of healing and restoration. Bring us closer to you. Enable us to discern your will for us, that we may serve you more faithfully by serving others in need. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Please join me in a call to worship by standing, leaving your masks on, and participating in a responsive reading. When all we have hoped for and trusted in has let us down, the Christ who reaches out to us. When the world seems dark and despair threatens to close in upon us, there is Christ reaching out for us. Come, let us worship the Lord, who is always ready to reach out to us. We humbly come before the Lord in hope and faith. Amen. Please be seated as we hear and are uplifted by hymn number 110, A Mighty Fortress is Our God.
You are great, awesome, big, tremendous, our Creator, our Redeemer, our Sustainer. But you are also tender, kind, compassionate, gentle, our very best friend. It's hard for us to understand how we believe both of these about you, that you are holy, perfect, and yet you choose to live with us sinful persons. But that's because you are God. And we thank you for the character of God. We realize that so often we ask you to do things for us, and in prayer we do ask you to bring healing to those who are ill. We think of members of this congregation and others. We ask that you bring hope to those who are feeling isolated and alone and hurting because of this pandemic, and we include ourselves. We pray for those who are suffering from other health issues and concerns. We think of Deborah as she is in the hospital this morning. In gracious and loving God, we think of those who grieve, those who are unemployed or underemployed, for business owners, for teachers, for students, for all of us. We stand in need of you today. And yet we also know that even before we ask, you are already working in these situations in our lives. So we thank you for being God. We thank you for loving us. We thank you for being so huge and tremendous and awesome that we're inspired to fear you. And through that to gain wisdom. But most of all, we thank you for Jesus, who died for our sins, who rose from the dead, who lives today, who is our friend, even in this very moment. And I invite you to pray with me as this Jesus taught us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses. We forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and glory forever. And I invite you to spend just a moment as Dick plays, in thinking about the glory and greatness of God. One of the things that the Church Council tasked John, myself, and SBRC to do was to create job descriptions for staff, and then to every year do an evaluation. We start those evaluations today with Mike and Sally. And yet, John, I guess we didn't write a job description for our church flautist and oboist. So we'll have to work at that too, I guess. But welcome.
Thank you, Julie, Dick. I'm anticipating it's going to be a great week because I won $7 on last night's Powerball. My son said with the winnings I could celebrate by sharing a Starbucks coffee with somebody. Please hear now the gospel text for today, Romans 8, 28, 35, and 37 through 39. We know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. Who will separate us from the love of Christ? Will hardship or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am convinced that neither death nor life, nor angels nor rulers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor powers, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Jesus Christ our Lord. This is the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Thank you be to God.
Please remain seated as we hear and reflect on hymn number 700, Abide With Me.
think that my aspiration is to hang around with Paul more, because Paul's life seems to be a whole lot more exciting than mine. You know all about the Budweiser commercials, which I also had heard, but you're winning at Powerball. So if you see me on your doorstep, just take me wherever we need to go, okay? Well, thank you guys, Dick and Sally and everybody. Let's pray together. Oh, Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Today's sermon is one that I had promised to a friend to preach here at Community Church. But I think it's also a question, answers a question, deals with a question that is on our minds. And that friend is Larry Walton. Now, Larry, if you remember, I think Ken, you might have been there. I'm not sure if anybody else here was. At the end of one of our United Methodist Men's Zoom calls, made an honest confession, and I respect him for that. And that confession was this: I don't understand why God lets all these things happen. And we all are there with Larry. We don't understand it. We don't blame God for it, perhaps, but we don't understand why all the things that happen as they do. Let me also tell you the story of another friend of mine, a person you have not met. Now, I aired in the prior service, I mentioned this lady's name. I won't do that. But just know that she is a person who I have known for many years as a pastor. I was her pastor in Smyrna, and she was a wonderful, wonderful Christian woman. Very mature, very well thought, very faithful. I know her family because I buried 4 members of her family. I was there when her son lost custody of his daughter. I had been through difficult, challenging times with this lady. I was also a part of her life, and she was our mission coordinator there. And she did a tremendous, tremendous job. And this past week, we celebrated, along with the current pastor there, the Reverend Julie Lewis, the opening of a computer lab for women, for job opportunities and education, and children for education in the capital of Liberia, Monrovia. So I'm really thrilled that came to completion. I have been working on what is called a master's level coaching certificate. And I'm already a certified discipleship coach, but this is something in addition, something that I would like to be able to do in my retirement. And so she and I were talking this past Friday, and she said to me, Dale, I'm having a hard time. And I responded, like all good counselors do when they don't know what to say, tell me more. And she did. She said, I'm feeling that God is removed, distant, not close at hand, and I'm feeling confused and upset because the world is not what I think it should be if I accept the statement that God is in control. And that statement is a true statement. We say it, don't we? But the outward appearances are far different sometimes. And I asked her to, again, just to keep expanding on that a little bit, and she said to me this. She said, if God were in control, then everybody would like each other. Everybody would get along. There would be no danger to nature or the world, and no one would be sick. Now, I understand that this lady, who is a wonderful woman, a wonderful Christian, faithful person, knows that that's not the reality we live in. It's the reality she longs for, that we long for, and ultimately we call that place heaven. But it's hard sometimes to match the character and person of God with the reality that we experience. And I know that she is not the only one, nor is Larry, nor am I. I do not believe that God sends to us, picks us out and chooses us by name for certain diseases or certain disasters or problems. God does not say, you are going to have cancer, or you're going to have this illness, or you're going to have COVID-19, or that your business is going to fail, or that your husband might die, or a child might die. I don't believe in a God that is that deterministic, because if you do believe that God takes people, well, the one that I hate the most, God needed another little angel in heaven, that God then can be blamed for all sorts of bad stuff. The Holocaust, hurricanes, and yes, even volcanoes. I see God as loving and kind, and the promise to us as people is not that these things will not cross our path. And when they do, they are incredibly painful. I would never, ever, as a pastor, as a friend, as a Christian, minimize the reality of that pain. For some, dealing with that pain lasts a lifetime. Well, what I can say with certainty are two things. One is that God is with us throughout the conversation we have regarding why and what. And secondly, that God can handle our doubts, our questions, frustration we feel, and never, ever, ever stop loving us. I just think that's who God is. You can disagree with me, but I really believe in a God who suffers and cries and hurts with us. Jürgen Moltmann, a German theologian, says that God weeps when we weep. God cheers when we cheer. And above all, God is a God of hope, who will one day take all of this and make it right. So what do we do in the face of the reality of COVID-19 and the pandemic? And I'm not sure of the number, but I know we are either approaching or have passed 400,000 deaths. I don't even know how to conceive of that. That staggers my understanding. And I pray for and I hurt for the people who mourn the loss of moms and dads and grandparents and uncles and aunts and children. I just can't conceive of it. But I also don't believe that God sent that or caused that, because I believe that God suffers in the midst of it with us. As I think about the reality of evil, and in the study of theology and biblical studies, we call that theodicy, the reality of evil in the world that God created good. What do we do? How do we think about it? I have three affirmations that I have made in my life. And I'm not saying that this is the end of the question, because I think it's a question we talk about a lot, and we wrestle with a lot. One of my very, very favorite, if not favorite, books of the Bible is Job. Why do the innocent suffer? Why the reason? What is the background? What is the reason, the rationale for undeserved, unmerited suffering? And I've read Job many, many times, and I've read pieces of Job many times, and I still wrestle with that book. It's my very favorite and least favorite book of the Bible all at the same time. I like the dialogue between God and Job. I even kind of like the dialogue between Job's friends and Job's wife and Job, and how Job defends them even though they're way off base in the end. What I don't like is the ending. Because it seems as if everything's okay because Job gets his animals back, and he gets his house back, and he gets his health back, and he gets new children, as if children can be replaced in that fashion. I don't know of any family who's ever lost a child who would buy that. So what do we do with the reality? Three affirmations. Number one, I believe in the destructive power of sin and the reality of evil. I believe that sin in all its forms brings about death and destructiveness to human persons, to human relationships, to our world. And that sin is expressed in things like greed, where we want more than what we should take, to the extent that others have to do without. It results in all kinds of death-dealing, death-destructive realities that cause brokenness and harm and pain and violence in our world. Billy Graham once defined sin as missing the mark, and I think it's a great definition, because our aim is to be more and more like Christ, but because of our sin nature being born into selfishness and sin, we sometimes often miss it. You know those hymns that say, prone to wander, Lord, I feel it, prone to leave the God I love. We are wanderers. We are always looking for something that we think will satisfy when only God will. I believe in the destructive power of sin. And I believe that there is a force of evil in the world, whether you want to call it Satan, the devil, whatever, the term doesn't matter. But there are those things, those people, those realities that work against the good that God is doing. I remember as a kid growing up, and Flip Wilson would come on TV and he would say, the devil made me do it. Yeah, but we have some choice in that matter too. And not to be made fun of or to mock, but I do believe that there is a reality of evil. If I didn't, I couldn't explain some of the sheer meanness of what's happening in our world. There are people who are just interested in hurting and destroying and killing others. That is their purpose in life, and I can't fathom that. I mean, I was so fortunate to have the parents and family that I do. Maybe that's part of the reason. I don't know, but it's all too real. Friends, I've only been in the presence of real evil, what I would call real evil, twice in my life. First time was, I had a parishioner at a church in Chestertown who was in his 80s. And it was discovered that he had physically and sexually abused about 50 to 57 women over numerous years. They had a boat, he would lure them down to the boat, and then he would threaten them and manipulate them and never say anything. His wife and family did not know and were horrified when it was discovered. I went and visited him in jail at the time. That's what pastors do. I never come out of the jail experience feeling like I really accomplished what I wanted to, and I just have to leave it with God. But when I looked at him and he said to me, I will never, ever, ever say I did anything wrong. And all the lives that he had marred and destroyed, I can't put it in words, I can't point you to it. I can just say I felt as if I were in the real presence of evil. He has since passed away, and his wife has as well. His wife was one of the kindest, gentlest persons you ever meet, who spent the rest of her life trying to figure out why. He destroyed not only the lives of these women, but his own family and his own life. The second time was a different situation. I'm a history guy. I was a history major in college along with biblical studies. I've read a lot about the Second World War. I'm by no means an expert, but that's my area of expertise. My sister always makes fun of me. She says, "So what documentary are you watching now?" So I am. And Zach had been begging me years ago to go to the National Holocaust Museum. You ever been? I will say this to you. I'm glad I went, and I'll never go again. The reality of what Nazi Germany and those individuals who were so caught up in that did to 6 million plus Jews and gypsies and handicapped and challenged persons is horrifying. The thing I remember most, if you've been there, is that wall of shoes from the people who died at Auschwitz. I came out, and Zach and I came out, and we stepped on the sidewalk out in front, and he looked at me and he said, "I'm really sorry, Dad." And I said, "Why are you sorry?" He said, "Because this was horrifying." And it was, and I said to him, "I understand." He says, "I would never want to come back." And I said, "Neither do I." I think when we're confronted by that kind of in-your-face reality, we forget that there's all kinds of evil that operates in our world. And, you all and I, we're very blessed, we're very fortunate. We try to treat each other well, but I do believe in the reality. The second affirmation I make is one that I'll have to illustrate by going back Sally and Edward's playground in elementary school. So I think you're ready for this one. Do you remember what used to be called the teeter-totter or the seesaw? Okay, remember the point was to keep them balanced, right? To have enough weight on each end that you could go up and down and have a nice ride. But there was always that child on the playground who jumped off and you went crashing down. So if the point is to hold it in balance, then the balance that must be held is the balance between an all-knowing, perfect, all-powerful God. And these are things that we as United Methodists and I as your pastor and you all, I hope, affirm. That God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and God remains connected to and present in this world in the midst of its suffering and pain. The first hymn, "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," I selected that hymn because it illustrates that reality, that point. An all-knowing and all-powerful God has to be kept in balance, our understanding with the reality of free will. I am an heir, because of my theological training, of John Wesley. John Wesley believed in human free will. That we as people are given the choice to choose good, to choose evil. And that if we did not have that choice, our relationship with God would be something robotic, or perhaps we would love God because of what God does for us or gives to us, not simply because of who God is, or that like any relationship that can be bad, we would want to be in a relationship with God because of our own selfish desires. And we know that those are not love. If we're only in it for what we can get out of it, that is not love. We as human beings can make some really, really good choices. There's a lot of good things that people do. I'm convinced that by and large, most people are really good people and want to do well, and want to be loving, and want to be kind. Now, that's affected by the fact I hang around with you guys, right? Who we hang around with affects that. I mean, if we're hanging around with people who are in prison, then maybe that's a different story. But I'm convinced that people are by and large good. But we also can make some horrible choices, can't we? Making terrible choices that are destructive and mean. And yet even then, God doesn't stop loving us. We face the consequences of those choices. If I go down the street and rob a bank, and I'm more than likely going to get caught, I'm just not that bright, then there will be some consequences. I'll be arrested, I'll be embarrassed, I'll go to jail, and I'll spend time in jail. Those consequences are not because God attaches them. The consequences come as a result of our choices. So what I'm saying is this: God is all-knowing and all-powerful. God can do anything that is in keeping with God's character and person, and the balance of that is our free will. And if we need to blame someone for what is happening in our world, then I would say to you that these are the consequences of our actions. And before we blame God, we better take a hard look at ourselves. I can see in the world that I live in, that you share, so many consequences, so many things, so many times, it's because we have chosen not to be concerned with the other, not to be concerned with the most vulnerable, but we have chosen based upon our own selfish, not just needs, but wants. Those consequences matter. I also know that the greatest expression of God's love occurred on the cross of Calvary. And I believe in my heart, wholeheartedly, that what we do with the crucified, risen Christ makes all the difference. And my third affirmation is, I believe in the ultimate victory of God. Evil will not win. Sin will not be first. God wins. When that will happen, I can't tell you. I wish I knew. Jesus says that even he doesn't know when the Father will declare victory. But I do know that God wins. That love and life triumph. Why do I know this? I see it in life. Because even as the world and the evil and the terrible destructive power of sin tries to push to choke out our light, God's light still shines. I am, as a person, deeply concerned with issues in and around hunger. Have been for years and years and years. And I'm very concerned about children who are hungry. You know, to me, that's an evil. That's a destructive power, example of destructive power of sin. But you know, even during the midst of COVID, the food pantry never once closed. That we were shipping because of so much surplus and just trying to get it so we could have space in the food pantry. 300 or more pounds of food every week. Every month or so to work. And we still can't give away enough that we can have all the space we need. There's an African American church, middle school, and now a second African American church that are taking this food and going door to door in the town of Pueblo and handing it out to people who are hungry. And that's true of other places too. I mean, that's just close to me because it's home. Even though sin leading to the hunger of children who have never asked for anything but to be loved, it seemed to be greater strength. In the time of this pandemic, it still cannot become a light coming from the food pantry. And that's just one example. We could go on and on and on and on and talk about how God's light and love shine through. God ultimately wins in God's timing. Which Paul read so well, even though it's not the same Paul, in Romans 8 says, what shall separate us from the love of God? It says, who shall separate us from the love of God? I always want that to be what? Well, I think the reason is who is there because the choice is ours. And he comes after building a crescendo of higher and stronger and greater and bigger and above the earth and below the earth. Paul comes to this place where he says that nothing can ever separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. Nothing. That God is always loving, always there, always present. Revelation 21, verse 3. Anybody memorize that one? I have, because I have the sad reality of doing far too many funerals. But here's what it says. And God himself will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Neither shall death be, nor crying, nor mourning, nor pain, nor heartache, nor anything that would seek to destroy or damage or harm. Over and over again, we see these examples in Scripture, like the lion and the lamb, and other places where we see that God's new world is a place of peace and harmony where all are welcomed, all are valued, all are loved, because at the very center of it is Christ himself. And of course, the greatest event of all of these is Easter. We are a people of the cross. Yes, we are. In our lives and our future, there is a God-shaped cross ahead because we are all called to take up our cross, to sacrifice, to bear it in the name of our Savior, who we seek to emulate. But more than even being a people of the cross, we are an Easter people. We believe that Jesus rose from the dead. It's so awesome. And we as a church, and we as Methodists, because we're prone to like to do things in family, have used many of Adam Hamilton's Bible study, right? Videos and books, and we kind of know the pattern that he uses and all kinds of stuff. And I like Adam a lot. I've met him a couple times. He is exactly who he appears to be, a wonderful, wonderful man. A faithful disciple. And every Easter Sunday at Church of the Resurrection, he closes his sermon in this way, and I close it with all due respect to him. He'll stand there and he'll say, now I've told you all about the fact that Christ is risen. Do I believe it? Do I really believe it? And he says this, I have staked my whole life, all that I am, all that I do, and my eternity on the reality that Christ died and rose again. I absolutely, with my whole heart, believe. We are an Easter people. We believe that Christ who was dead is risen. And because Christ is risen, all of the enemies of our souls and our lives have been defeated. And not only that, we have a God who journeys with us through them, who is there in our darkest and our greatest, in all the moments in between. So I talked to Larry a little bit last night by text, because I guess that's the new way we talk to one another. He was talking about taking Deborah back to the hospital and all kinds of stuff. And he said that he wasn't sure he would be able to watch this morning. So I hope he does watch later on. And please know that in this world we will experience suffering, heartache, and pain. Don't give up hope, for Christ has overcome. So our closing hymn is one that I try to blend both of those aspects of the greatness of God and the love, the free will of God, with hymn 117, O God, our help in ages past. This morning we're going to make a mad dash, John Lutz and I, to the hospitality room. We begin staff evaluations with Mike and Sally. I'm a little bit disappointed that neither one has paid me anything. Maybe that's still coming, I don't know.
We'll see how it goes.
What might?
I said, we'll see how it goes.
See how it goes, okay. Yeah, I know, I hear you. But, so if you don't see me, please be careful in driving and all the things you do. It looks like it's snowing to beat the band right now. Here's my guideline to you. If we ever have another time like this that starts before Sunday, maybe it snows out here or something, your safety and your well-being is more important to me than your attendance. I always like to see you always get excited and things, but if you're afraid and feel uncomfortable in driving or coming, please don't feel obliged to. I want you to be safe and well at home. I would rather you do that than have a greater number here. And always we'll try to get the information out as soon as we can. And you all have my cell phone number and my text and email. And it is always appropriate if you're not sure to call or text or email. Once I'm here in the service, I don't keep my phone with me, but prior to that I do. And even if it's 4 o'clock in the morning, it's okay. Call me and say, hey, what's going on? Can you tell me? I would like for you, prefer for you, want you to be safe as well. I also will say to you that next Sunday is Holy Communion. We're going to be serving Holy Communion through the back, through the picking up yours there. Then you realize that after that, Lent starts very soon, very quickly after that. But there is Valentine's Day in between. And so there's some good in all of this as well. I'm going to be working on, during the season of Lent, a prayer vigil online, on Zoom or somehow, I don't know, as soon as I can learn, for the mission and ministry of this church. And so if you'd be looking for that and participate, I would really greatly appreciate that. I'm going to ask you to pray in your home. I'm not going to ask you to come here because I know that COVID's out and all things are happening. So when we get to that prayer vigil, all I'm asking you to do is to spend about a half hour in prayer. And so please do be aware of that. So John, are you ready? Have they paid you? No. Okay. All right, here we go. Let us pray together. Have a great day. Go in peace, and may God's peace go with you, bring hope and healing to all you meet. Amen. Go in peace, friends.
And Terry is going to direct your reading.
Please don't forget God.